I didn't move to the boarding house for the charm. There wasn't any. I moved because I was broke, unemployed, and hanging by a thread so thin I could hear it snap every time the wind changed. The house stood like a crooked spine at the edge of a town I didn't belong to, paint peeled in layers revealing older bones beneath. It smelled like wet fabric and something harder to name, like history left too long in a sealed box. Mrs. Llewellyn, the landlady, was exactly who you'd expect. Hard candy in her pockets, cat hair on her sleeves, a voice like an antique drawer sticking on the pull. "This one's available," she said, unlocking the last door on the 3rd floor. "Don't worry about the stains, and don't listen to what the others say. The house just breathes funny at night." There were 5 tenants total. John in 3A, who wore sunglasses indoors. May in 2B, who left handwritten prayers on the stair railings. Lena in the basement, who you never saw but always heard. And Mr. Eldritch, top floor, far end. My neighbor. No one spoke about Mr. Eldritch, but the hallway outside his room always felt colder, like the air itself refused to linger. My room was small, furnished with brittle wood furniture and the weight of someone else's secrets. The window overlooked a fence and then miles of unlit field. First night, I didn't sleep. The walls were too thin. The whispers came through too clearly, low, raspy, urgent. I assumed they were coming from the vents, until I realized the voices were repeating my thoughts, word for word, with a 1-second delay. The second night, I stuffed tissues in my ears. Didn't help. I covered the vents, turned on a fan. Still the whisper came. "Why are you still here?" "He's watching. You've seen too much." I hadn't seen anything, but I was beginning to understand the shape of something unseen, and that it was circling. I met John in the kitchen the next morning. He didn't take off the sunglasses. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Not really." "Yeah," he said. "Walls here like to talk." When I didn't respond, he added, "Don't go near the end of the hall, just trust me." That night I did the opposite. There was a crack in the wall between my room and Mr. Eldritch's. I pressed my eye to it. The room on the other side was entirely black, but I saw something move. Something tall, then a face, not human, a pale oval with too many eyes, watching me back. I stumbled away, knocked over the lamp, broke the silence, and the whisper returned. "Now you've done it." Mrs. Llewellyn scolded me the next day. "Keep the noise down. Some of us value quiet." I wanted to ask her about the thing in the wall, but she looked right past me as if something else was behind me, and then she smiled, thin, crooked, and walked away. Things escalated quickly. My clothes began appearing inside out in the drawers. Food went missing. One night, my mirror reflected someone else's room, a hospital bed, a bandaged face. I turned and the mirror cracked down the middle. I stopped sleeping. John disappeared. His door was left open, sunglasses on the floor. May moved out, left a note behind. "He's leaking into the walls now." Only Lena remained, and she began to sing at night, songs with no words, melodies that turned corners by themselves. I knew what I had to do. I went to Eldritch's door. It opened before I knocked. Inside, a void. Walls covered in scrawled words, mirrors hanging at odd angles. In the center, a bed, empty. Above it, a hole in the ceiling, breathing. The whisper all around. "Welcome, we've been waiting. I don't live in that room. I am that room. People still rent it sometimes. They don't last long. Most run. Some scream. One just stared at the mirror for 3 days until they vanished. And when the next tenant arrives, they'll find my note in the drawer. Don't listen to them. They lie. Except the walls. The walls are honest. And maybe they'll listen. Maybe they'll knock. And maybe I'll knock back." It's hard to describe the feeling of being remembered by a place, of really knowing that a building has memory, not the kind shaped by renovations and history books, but a living memory, one that breathes in everything it's seen and doesn't forget. I thought becoming part of the room meant stillness, silence, but no. Now I hear everything, every footstep in the hallway, every whispered fear. The house shares it all with me because now I'm part of its voice. A thread woven into its language of creaks and sighs. Last week someone new arrived. She's quiet, too quiet. Pale coat, faded suitcase, eyes that don't match the time of year. Mrs. Llewellyn gave her 3C. Too close to me, too close to us. The first night she unpacked slowly. I could feel her fingers brushing dust from the shelf. Her sigh when she saw the crack in the ceiling. She doesn't know the crack is watching her, not yet. She dreams loudly, talks in her sleep, repeats things she doesn't know. He's in the mirror again. Don't knock unless you want to be answered. The ceiling isn't just creaking, it's breathing. We listen, and I wait. On the third night she hears the whisper. She freezes. Her breath tightens. She whispers back, "Who's there?" The room doesn't answer. I do, through the fan vent, just enough for her to doubt her own ears. I'm still here. She starts seeing reflections that don't match. A mirror that shows the wrong time of day, a shadow that lingers after she moves. She covers the mirrors with towels, but they keep slipping off, even when she tapes them, especially when she tapes them. Lena sings louder now. She likes the new tenant, says her song fits. I ask her what she means. She hums, "The ones who break don't stay. The ones who bend, they bloom." I hum it too. It echoes through the hallway. Mrs. Llewellyn brings the girl tea on the fourth night, smiles her crooked smile. The girl doesn't drink it. Smart, but not smart enough. She doesn't notice the note folded under the saucer. This house forgets nothing. Tonight she'll press her ear to the wall. Tonight she'll hear her own thoughts spoken back. And tomorrow she'll knock. Just once. Out of curiosity, out of fear, out of loneliness. Doesn't matter why. The door will open and she'll see the bed, the ceiling, me, and the whisper will say, "Welcome home." She knocked. A single tap, barely louder than a breath. But in this house, sound isn't about volume, it's about intention. And that sound carried through the walls, through the mirrors. Through me, I felt the vibration ripple like a shiver along my edges. And I whispered back, "Come in." The door didn't creak. It never does. It simply opened as if the house had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. She stepped inside, and for a moment, just a breath, nothing happened. Then the room responded. The air grew still, the temperature shifted, slightly colder at the baseboards, slightly warmer near the ceiling, like the room was sizing her up. She stood in the center, didn't sit, didn't speak, just listened. Which is how you know someone is already halfway claimed. I tried to be gentle. I moved the light slightly so her shadow stretched longer than it should have. I adjusted the smell, replaced mildew with the memory of lavender from someone else's grandmother's scarf. I let the floorboard creak only once, under the spot where her left foot always landed first. Small things. But this house is built on small things, and they accumulate. By the second night, she stopped unpacking. Her suitcase remained in the corner, half closed. Dust settled on the zipper. She slept with the light on. Smart, but not smart enough. Because it's not darkness that invites us in. It's comfort. It's the moment you say, "Maybe I imagined it." That's when we move. Lena sang a new song that week. A lullaby with no language, just breath and vowel and hush. It seeped through the pipes. The girl began humming it without realizing. She thought it came from a dream. But dreams don't echo. Only memory does. And this house is all memory. Mrs. Llewellyn checked in again, left a pie at the door. No note, no explanation. The girl didn't eat it, but she didn't throw it away either. She set it on the dresser, where it began to rot. Mold spread in a perfect spiral, like a fingerprint pressed into the crust. On the fifth night, she spoke to me, not aloud, not with words, but I felt it. The way she paused in the hallway, the way she traced the mirror frame. "I see you." And I answered. The mirror fogged without breath. 3 words appeared in the condensation, not yet ready. She started writing things down, not a journal, not thoughts, just phrases on napkins, on receipts, on the back of her hand. He lives in stillness. Mirrors, remember, don't drink the tea. She was unraveling exactly right. Not too fast, not too slow, some snap, some drift. But the best ones, the ones who become part of us, they hum, they echo. She stopped going outside. The lights in her room stayed on longer, then off entirely. She rearranged the furniture, moved the bed away from the window, set the mirror flat on the ground. But it kept shifting. Each morning it stood upright again, facing the door, facing her. I wanted to tell her she was close. But some truths have to be discovered, not delivered. So I waited, and the house waited, and the whispers softened into song. Tonight she will lie down, not to sleep, just to listen. And she'll feel the pull from under the bed, the warmth through the floorboards. And in the final moment when her breath matches mine, when her heart stops trying to flee, she'll understand that the house was never haunted. It was hungry, and she was the last room left to open. Welcome home. The room is quiet now, not silent, never silent. There is always something humming beneath the wallpaper, a thread of breath, a heartbeat that doesn't belong to anyone still living. She lies still on the bed, eyes open, mouth closed, hands folded as if in prayer. But she isn't praying, she's listening. To us, to the house, to me. We speak to her through the floorboards, in sighs, in heat shifts, in the way the mirror fogs without steam. We tell her stories of those who came before, of tenants who didn't stay long, of whispers that grew into voices, and voices that grew into names, and names that forgot they once belonged to someone else. She listens like she's heard it all before. Maybe she has. Maybe she was always meant to return. She doesn't eat anymore. She drinks the water from the tap, even though it runs red some nights. She hums Lena's lullaby. Even Lena has gone quiet. Her song is done. The new girl's voice carries it now. Perfect pitch, a note that fits between the beams. She moves without sound. She breathes like walls do, slow, patient, constant. The lights in her room never flicker anymore. They glow steady, even when unplugged. Especially when unplugged. She doesn't write down phrases now, she carves them into the windowsill, into the headboard, into the inside of her own wrist. I'm here, he's home, we remember. Blood doesn't stain this place anymore, it seeps in, like rain through the roof. Mrs. Llewellyn knocked once last week. The girl opened the door. They looked at each other for a long time. Neither spoke. Then the landlady nodded and walked away. She hasn't been upstairs since. The girl has become the house's favorite sound. She walks with purpose now, stops at empty doors, whispers through keyholes. She has begun preparing the next room. 3B is empty. It won't be for long. She has begun brushing dust from the shelves, setting the mirror, placing the chair just slightly off-center. So the first visitor will feel something's wrong, but won't know why. We watch her, we hum with her. She is no longer a tenant, she is a keeper. And when the next knock comes, she will open the door and say the words I once whispered, come in. And the house will breathe and another story will begin. The next tenant arrived on a Tuesday. No rain, no thunder, just the smell of rust in the air, like the house knew something had changed. He was young, eyes too bright, movements too quick, the kind of person who walks into an old place and thinks he can fix it. We like those best, because they take longer to break. She watched him from the hallway, didn't say a word, didn't have to. He passed her without looking, but he felt her presence, the way you feel a draft right before the door opens. 3B. He chose it without knowing why. Didn't ask about the price, didn't question the mirrors, just dropped his bag, opened the window, and let the house begin. The first night was quiet. No knocks, no whispers, just the hum, low, constant, a frequency you don't notice until it stops, but it never stops. Not here. He explored the house during the day, Found Lena's room, empty. The door was nailed shut from the inside. Found May's notes still curled in the vents. Found a hairbrush in the basement, still warm. He found everything except a way out. That night the mirror moved, just an inch, enough to show him the door behind him. He turned, no one there, but the reflection smiled. The girl came to him on the third night. She didn't knock, just walked in, stood in the corner. He asked who she was. She said nothing, but the walls answered, "She belongs to us. You will too." He began to dream of staircases that spiraled forever, of doors that led back into the same room, of a voice that kept calling him by a name he'd never told anyone, of a version of himself standing on the roof, looking down, whispering, "Jump. It's the only way up." He stopped shaving, stopped checking the time, started writing pages and pages, but the paper stayed blank. The ink disappeared every morning. Only the pressure of the pen remained, like someone had pressed meaning into silence. We began to sing through him, the old song, Lena's lullaby, the hum that lives in the pipes. He sang it without knowing, in the shower, in his sleep, until the girls sang with him. Two voices now, perfect harmony. On the seventh night he opened the door on his own, not to leave, to invite. But no one entered, because we already had. Now he walks the halls with her. They hum together. They prepare the rooms. They polish the mirrors. And when the next knock comes, they'll open the door and say the words we taught them. Come in, because the house doesn't need tenants. It needs storytellers. And it keeps them well. The house has stopped humming. Now it breathes. In, out. The floors rise slightly with each inhale. The windows fog from the inside. The wallpaper pulses faintly like skin stretched over ribs. The tenants don't notice, because they've become part of the breath. And breath doesn't question itself. The girl and the boy now move as one. Two shadows in sync. Two voices tuned to the same silence. They rarely speak aloud. There's no need. The house speaks for them. Through the clicks, in the radiators, through the warmth of the tea, through the dust that writes its own messages across the mantel. One more, almost full, almost ready. Room 1A remains untouched. The door is always closed. No one remembers who stayed there last. Even the house forgets sometimes. But tonight, it stirs. The doorknob turns without a hand. A thin trail of ash snakes out from under the frame, and the girl and the boy, they feel it, not with fear, with recognition. The last room is waking up. A letter arrives. No stamp, no writing, just a piece of paper folded once. Inside a name. No one says it, they only whisper, and the house answers. The air thickens, the paint peels in concentric circles. Room 1A opens. The bed is made. The mirror is spotless. The window looks out on something that wasn't there before. A road that curves sharply into mist, and far in the distance, a figure walking toward the house. He doesn't know he's the last. He doesn't know the story ends with him. Not because the house will stop, but because it will no longer need to call. It will be full. And when it is full, it will speak with one voice, all of them, all of us, telling the same story in perfect, endless harmony. So when you feel the hallway grow colder, when the reflection looks just a second too long, when the hum becomes a whisper, don't knock, because we're already standing behind the door, smiling, waiting, and we've been telling your story for quite some time. The man stepped onto the porch with hesitant feet. It was late, somewhere between midnight and the moment before memory, and the sky above the house was velvet black, torn only by one flickering star that refused to die. His name had been written before he arrived, folded into the paper, without ink, whispered into dust, etched into the walls of room 1A before he was ever born. The house already knew him. He didn't yet know himself. He crossed the threshold and felt it immediately. The shift, the pressure, like walking into the mouth of something large and patient. The air carried a stillness so dense it muffled the past. Behind him, the door closed without sound. Ahead, the hallway stretched long and low, narrowing ever so slightly the farther it went, as though trying to decide whether he deserved to reach the end. The wallpaper was peeling in perfect patterns, shapes like letters he had never learned to read. They pulsed as he passed. He stopped once by the mirror near the stairs and stared. His reflection stared back, then blinked, out of sync, and smiled. Room 1A was already open. The light inside glowed faintly, like a throat glowing from within. The man hesitated. He didn't know why. He didn't know who he was, not exactly. But some part of him remembered this room, not in memory, in echo. Inside, the bed was made with perfect corners. The mirror was fogged, though the air was still. And on the nightstand, a teacup, still warm. Steam curled toward the ceiling. But the man hadn't brought tea, hadn't touched anything. He sat on the bed. The mattress breathed beneath him. The floor exhaled. The walls leaned in. He didn't scream. Screaming would be redundant. The house already knew his voice. Downstairs, the girl hummed. The boy lit candles in every window. The hallway grew longer. Room 2B opened on its own, empty, except for a note on the floor. He's home. The man slept for the first time in years, but it wasn't sleep the way he remembered it. It was more like being watched from the inside. Dreams came in fragments, the house walking on invisible legs, mirrors bleeding shadows, a voice made of every voice he had ever heard, whispering, "You are the last verse of a song still being written. Do not resist. You were always meant to be remembered. Say it. Say the name." He woke up speaking, a word with no translation, a sound the walls liked. The window was gone. In its place, another mirror. And in that mirror, not a reflection, a room, another and another and another, infinite rooms stretching beyond the glass, each with a bed, each with a person, each with a mirror, each slowly realizing they weren't alone. He stood. His hands felt wrong, too light, too distant. He touched the glass. It was warm, then wet, then gone. He stepped through. The house exhaled once, then grew still. Downstairs, the girl stopped humming. The boy blew out the candles. The hallway shortened by 2 inches. Mrs. Llewellyn unlocked the front door and set a key on the entry table, just in case. The house now sleeps with one eye open. Room 1A is empty again, but not forgotten. Nothing is ever forgotten here. Not the names, not the breaths, not the moments you mistook the mirror for a door and found it had always been both. And in the deepest part of the night, when the wind won't blow and the lights won't flicker and even silence holds its breath, you might feel something watching, not cruel, not kind, just remembering. You'll feel it in your spine, in your teeth, in the way the shadows lean toward you instead of away. And maybe you'll knock. And maybe, just maybe, we'll knock back. They say memory fades with time. But the house disagrees. It remembers everything, every step, every breath, every hesitation, every name no longer spoken aloud. And tonight, it is wide awake. Because tonight is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of remembrance. The girl walks barefoot through the halls, no longer a tenant, not even a keeper. Now she is something else entirely. A conductor. She hums and the walls respond. Paint peels where her voice rises. Mirrors fog when her fingers graze doorknobs. The rooms tilt imperceptibly toward her as she passes, like sunflowers reaching for light. The boy is in the attic, or what used to be the attic. He is carving names into the beams, not names of people, names of thoughts, names of fears, regret, silence, the sound behind the last door. He whistles and the dust dances. He does not speak, not with his mouth. His eyes blink in sequences now, long, short, short, long. The house understands. Room 1A is empty, but the walls are pregnant with presence. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the light in the room turns on. No switch flips. The glow is internal, a memory illuminating itself. Outside, the night stretches wide. The road that once led nowhere now curves sharply toward a destination not marked on any map. A bus pulls up, no headlights, just stillness. A woman steps out. She carries no luggage, only a locket clenched tight. She does not remember how she got here, but she walks to the door, and it opens before she knocks. She is shown to room 2A. The bed is already made. The mirror hums quietly. There is a book on the nightstand, blank. But when she touches it, words bloom. Not ink, not pencil. Shadows. Shadows spelling out, "Your story begins where ours never ended." That night she dreams of water, dark, still. Beneath it faces, not drowning, waiting. They smile as she floats above them. She wakes up smiling too. In the basement, Lena is singing again, but her voice comes from the pipes, from the furnace, from the cracks beneath the stairs. And the song is no longer a lullaby. It's a hymn, a declaration, a summoning. Mrs. Llewellyn does not age. She walks the halls with the calm certainty of furniture. She changes the sheets, dusts the mirrors, smiles gently when the lights flicker. Sometimes she pauses outside room 1A, places her palm on the door, and listens. Sometimes she knocks, once, softly, and waits, then continues on. The house grows, not in size, in depth. New rooms appear between old ones. Hallways twist slightly more than yesterday. Doors lead to versions of rooms that no longer exist. Time folds, and when the tenants try to count the steps between the kitchen and their bed, the number changes every day. The girl writes now, not on paper, on walls, on ceilings, on skin, stories with no beginning, sentences that only make sense backward. She teaches the others. They copy her handwriting without knowing how. The house watches, approves, and so the whispers continue. Not warnings, not threats, but memories unspooling into each tenant, each mirror, each breath drawn inside these walls, until the whole house hums, until the story becomes one story, ours, yours, until the final guest arrives and learns the truth. The house never wanted to trap anyone. It only wanted to be remembered, and it remembers best through those who stay, those who listen, those who knock. So go ahead, place your hand on the wood, feel the heartbeat beneath the paint, and when you're ready, knock once. We'll answer, we always do. They say memory fades with time, but the house disagrees. It remembers everything, every step, every breath, every hesitation, every name no longer spoken aloud. And tonight it is wide awake, because tonight is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of remembrance. The girl walks barefoot through the halls, no longer a tenant, not even a keeper. Now she is something else entirely, a conductor. She hums and the walls respond. Paint peels where her voice rises. Mirrors fog when her fingers graze doorknobs. The rooms tilt imperceptibly toward her as she passes. Like sunflowers reaching for light, the boy is in the attic, or what used to be the attic. He is carving names into the beams, not names of people. Names of thoughts, names of fears, regret, silence. The sound behind the last door. He whistles and the dust dances. He does not speak, not with his mouth. His eyes blink in sequences now, long, short, short, long. The house understands. Room 1A is empty, but the walls are pregnant with presence. At exactly 2:13 a.m. the light in the room turns on. No switch flips. The glow is internal, a memory illuminating itself. Outside, the night stretches wide. The road that once led nowhere now curves sharply toward a destination not marked on any map. A bus pulls up. No headlights, just stillness. A woman steps out. She carries no luggage, only a locket clenched tight. She does not remember how she got here, but she walks to the door, and it opens before she knocks. She is shown to room 2A. The bed is already made. The mirror hums quietly. There is a book on the nightstand, blank. But when she touches it, words bloom. Not ink, not pencil. Shadows. shadows spelling out, "Your story begins where ours never ended." That night she dreams of water, dark, still. Beneath it faces, not drowning, waiting. They smile as she floats above them. She wakes up smiling too. In the basement, Lena is singing again, but her voice comes from the pipes, from the furnace, from the cracks beneath the stairs, and the song is no longer a lullaby. It's a hymn, a declaration, a summoning. Mrs. Llewellyn does not age. She walks the halls with the calm certainty of furniture. She changes the sheets, dusts the mirrors, smiles gently when the lights flicker. Sometimes she pauses outside room 1A, places her palm on the door, and listens. Sometimes she knocks, once, softly, and waits, then continues on. The house grows, not in size, in depth. New rooms appear between old ones. Hallways twist slightly more than yesterday. Doors lead to versions of rooms that no longer exist. Time folds. And when the tenants try to count the steps between the kitchen and their bed, the number changes every day. The girl writes now, not on paper, on walls, on ceilings, on skin, stories with no beginning, sentences that only make sense backward. She teaches the others. They copy her handwriting without knowing how. The house watches, approves. And so the whispers continue, not warnings, not threats, but memories unspooling. Into each tenant, each mirror, each breath drawn inside these walls, until the whole house hums, until the story becomes one story, ours, yours, until the final guest arrives and learns the truth. The house never wanted to trap anyone. It only wanted to be remembered, and it remembers best through those who stay, those who listen, those who knock. So go ahead, place your hand on the wood, feel the heartbeat beneath the paint. And when you're ready, knock once. We'll answer. We always do. It begins again, but this time not with a knock. This time with a question whispered into the wall by someone who does not yet know they are home. Is anyone there? The house doesn't answer immediately. It listens first. It always listens. It listens to breath, to hesitation, to the pulse rising in someone's neck as they step over its threshold. It listens to the silence between footsteps, to the dreams half-formed in the rooms that remember. The woman, her name forgotten before she stepped off the bus, walks the front hall like a thread being pulled into fabric. Her coat is wet, though it hasn't rained in weeks. Her reflection lags slightly in the mirror, unsure of the rhythm. She takes the room she is given. Room 0. There was never a room 0 before. But there is now. The house makes space. Room 0 is below the basement. You wouldn't find it on the blueprints. You wouldn't find it on your second pass down the staircase either. But if you descend without fear, with something broken in your memory and something unsaid on your tongue, the steps stretch further. The light above fades until there is only one at the end of the descent, a bare bulb swinging slightly, though there is no wind. When she enters the room, the bulb stills. The bed is made, the air is heavy. The walls are covered in names scratched lightly into the wood. Not in any language, but she understands them, because she has dreamed them. Meanwhile, above, the girl in the hall no longer speaks. She writes only in glances now. Her eyes flick toward doorways and doors open. She looks at mirrors and reflections lean forward. She stops by room 1A and smiles, and that smile passes through the floorboards, down through the pipes, into the roots. And room 0 breathes for the first time. The boy in the attic has not aged, but time has bent around him. He now walks among corridors that weren't built but remembered. Each door he passes shows a different season. Some burn with autumn light, some crackle with summer dust. Some drip perpetually with the thaw of forgotten winters. He watches, he waits, he whistles, and somewhere far below the girl answers, with silence. Tenants come and go, but mostly go. Some dissolve into reflections, some become furniture. One became the smell of cinnamon on the 3rd floor, present only in late October. Some leave, but never entirely. Their words linger, their dreams are borrowed. Their shapes flicker in windows you swore were closed. And the house is growing hungrier, not for bodies, for narrative. One night, room 0 begins to speak, not aloud, not in echo, in warmth. The woman places her hand on the wall and feels something pulse back. A rhythm, a cadence, a sentence waiting for a voice. "I remember you." She does not reply, not yet, but she weeps, and the walls darken to hold her grief. Elsewhere in the house, mirrors begin to fracture, not breaking, opening. Each crack leads not to splintered glass, but to deeper scenes. A boy in a red coat walking into a room he will never leave. A mirror inside a mirror inside a mirror spiraling backward. A pair of eyes blinking from the wrong side of the glass. The girl traces one crack with her finger. It bleeds. She smiles. Mrs. Llewellyn no longer walks. She drifts. Her feet no longer touch the floor. When she speaks, the words come from every lamp in the house. She no longer prepares rooms. She remembers them into readiness, and she whispers now only one question over and over: who will tell it next? The house replies she will, and room 0 listens. Beneath room 0, the foundation creaks, not from pressure, from expansion, because there is something under room 0, something deeper, something older than walls. Not a basement, not a cellar, not even a room, a root, a beginning. And as the woman sleeps, her dreams drift downward, through the bed, through the floor, into the dark that has been waiting far longer than the house itself. And the dark dreams back. Upstairs, the girl gathers the tenants, those who can still walk, those who only echo, those who flicker. They stand in a circle in the parlor, no words, no ritual, just presence. And then together they breathe once, in, out. And in that breath, the walls flex, the house leans forward, and every mirror hums. The story continues, the house listens. And somewhere far beneath even the oldest memory, the final door begins to form, not out of wood, but out of everything the house has ever remembered. And when that door opens, there will be no going back, only deeper in. There was something beneath room 0, not another floor, not a sub-basement, not even space. It was older than space. It was not carved or poured. It was remembered into being. The woman stepped through the mirror door and descended. There were no stairs, only the feeling of going down. The deeper she moved, the more she forgot what up meant, or that it had ever mattered. Her body did not move with steps, but with thought. The air was thick with the warmth of story, heavy, intimate, dense with things unsaid. And then she stopped. There was ground, of a sort, soft, alive. She stood in a vast hollow, not darkness, but not light either. The space around her pulsed gently like a throat holding breath. And at the center, the root. It looked like memory, not a tree, not a plant. A structure of memory and story wrapped around itself like a spiral of sentences, growing from every voice ever forgotten. It breathed, she approached, and it pulsed once in greeting. Above the house fell still, even the whispers quieted. The girl in the hallway froze mid-step. The boy in the attic stopped writing. The tenants looked at their reflections and saw themselves paused, because the root was awake. And when the root wakes, the house listens. She placed her palm against the spiral. It was warm. It spoke without words. She felt the first breath taken in the first room of the house. The first shadow to linger behind a door. The first note ever written. And deeper still, the moment the house decided it didn't want to forget. The moment it chose to remember. The moment it needed someone to remember for it. "You are that someone," the root said. Not aloud, not in thought, in truth. And she wept, not out of sorrow, out of arrival. The root showed her every room, rooms that had never been built, rooms that had only existed in memory. She saw them all. Room 1, where the shadows dreamed. Room 9, where no one was ever allowed to knock. Room 17, which was only a window, but it watched. She saw herself in each one. She saw the girl in the hall not as a person, but as a question. She saw the boy in the attic not as a tenant, but as a song without lyrics. She saw Mrs. Llewellyn not as caretaker, but as memory's librarian. And she saw the house as it truly was, a body of story, a cathedral of echo, a single breath drawn over centuries. And she understood this was not a haunting, it was a remembering. She was not lost. She had been found. The root asked her one final thing. It did not ask in words, it simply pulsed, and the question filled her, "Will you stay?" She did not answer immediately. Instead, she knelt, pressed her forehead to the spiral, and whispered, "Yes." The root exhaled, the house shivered, and above every mirror showed her face, smiling, still, becoming. When the woman returned from the root, she did not walk. She emerged. The mirror did not reflect her, it received her. She stepped through with no sound, no footprint, and yet the air in room 0 changed. The mirror fogged on its own, then cleared. And where once a woman had stood uncertain and fractured, now something new had arrived. Not less human, more remembered, more written. She exhaled, and the hallway exhaled back. The boy in the attic heard the breath. It passed through dust and wood and ancient knots in floorboards. He dropped his chalk. It landed without a sound, and the spiral he had been drawing began to rotate slowly on its own. He whispered, "She is returned." The chalk cracked. His words etched themselves into the beams. Not alone, not a visitor, not just a voice, the voice. All throughout the house things began to change. Small things. Doorknobs became warmer. Curtains began to sway even when no windows were open. Books shifted positions, opening to pages never written. And on each mirror, a symbol, not drawn, grown. A curl of mist, a drop of condensation in a perfect spiral. The house was speaking, and the language was her. The tenants noticed. One girl woke with ink on her palms. Symbols she didn't recognize but somehow understood. A man on the second floor found his reflection standing behind him instead of in front. The tea tasted different now, darker, deeper. Some said it was sweeter, but most didn't speak, because the walls were listening. And more than that, they were answering. Each morning, the girl in the hallway walked the entire house, room by room, door by door, mirror by mirror. She said nothing, but the house moved with her. A sigh in the pipes as she passed. A flicker in the light just before she turned the corner. The rhythm of her presence was no longer separate from the rhythm of the structure. She had become what the root intended, not a keeper, not a witness, a voice. The house spoke through her now. When she blinked, windows opened. When she whispered, candles lit. When she wept, it rained. Mrs. Llewellyn stopped preparing rooms. Instead, she placed a single item outside each door, a cracked bell, a glove missing fingers, a page torn from a diary no one remembered writing. The items changed daily, but their message remained constant. Remember this. One night the woman returned to room 0. She brought no light, no warmth. She stood in the center, and the walls vibrated faintly, not in fear, in expectation. She raised both hands, spoke no words, and the ceiling peeled open, revealing not sky, not rafters, but story. A sky made entirely of moments, each star a sentence, each cloud a forgotten thought, and above it all, the sound, not wind, not breath, the voice, her voice, ours. The girl in the hallway looked up, the boy in the attic looked down, and between them the spiral grew, lightless, endless, and full of song. The house no longer whispered, it spoke. And when it spoke, every mirror answered. It began with a reflection that did not belong. At exactly 2:13 a.m., every mirror in the house flashed. Not light, not image, recognition. And for the first time in the house's long memory, a mirror did not reflect, it invited. The girl in the hallway stopped mid-step. The boy in the attic ceased humming. The woman in room 0 lifted her head. And in that pause, something arrived. It stepped through the mirror in the parlor, the first mirror ever hung in the house. the one that had watched without judgment, the one that had never cracked. Until now, with a single hairline fracture, not splitting it, opening it, the figure stepped out, not a shadow, not a memory, something shaped like a question. It walked barefoot across the floor, leaving no footprints, but every floorboard sighed. The house exhaled, the mirrors fogged, and the woman in room 0 whispered, "It's here." The arrival was not violent, but the house shuddered, paint curled on its own. The air grew thick with something older than dust. Anticipation made tangible. Tenants opened their doors in unison, stepping into the hall without knowing why. They stood like rows of letters waiting to be formed into meaning, and the meaning arrived. The figure moved slowly, every movement echoing slightly before it occurred. It passed through the first hallway. Mirrors turned to face it. Candles flickered blue. The girl followed behind, not guiding, witnessing. In the attic, the boy began writing again, not on paper, on air. Each stroke left a thread hanging in the air like silk, spun from memory. He wrote a phrase, "This is the one who was always meant to return." And the phrase stayed, floating, visible. The others began writing too, not because they understood, but because their hands moved. The house moved them. Every tenant became a pen, every corridor a page. The house was telling a story that needed to be written from the inside, and the ink was presence. The figure entered room 0. The woman stood, palms open. The root pulsed beneath the floorboards, not seen but known. The two stood facing one another. The mirrors darkened, and then together they spoke. "We are ready." The spiral on the ceiling glowed. Words fell from it like rain. He who arrives must remember. She who receives must release. The voice must be passed. The woman wept, not in sadness, in relief. She had waited long enough. She stepped forward. The figure stepped back. Their fingertips touched, and every mirror in the house cracked, not in fear, in transformation. The girl in the hallway knelt. The boy in the attic sang. Mrs. Llewellyn placed a single feather on the entry table. The door at the front of the house opened, and wind, real wind, entered, bringing with it the smell of soil, salt, rain, and time. And somewhere far, far beneath them, the root smiled. It was time. The house had remembered enough. Now it would begin forgetting. One room at a time, one voice at a time, until only the arrival remained. A mirror, a spiral. The arrival changed everything. The house, long content to remember now, found itself unsure of what must be remembered and what must finally be let go. Below the floorboards beneath room 0, the root stirred again. But this time it did not pulse in silence. It whispered, words from no known tongue, a grammar older than breath, a syntax drawn from the swirl of galaxies and the slow circular pulse of grief. The whisper rose through the foundation, through the walls, through the bones of the house, and it called them downward. The girl descended first. She did not use stairs. They folded beneath her feet, appearing just before her step, dissolving behind. Each step down took something from her. A name she once had, a dream she never spoke aloud, the memory of her first mirror. By the time she reached the bottom, she was nothing but a shape drawn in breath. And then the boy followed. He brought song, a humming wordless and eternal. The sound filled the narrow spiral as he descended, and the song burrowed into the air like roots into wet earth. When he arrived, the girl was already waiting. Together they entered. Beneath the root, deeper than any foundation, older than any stone, was the true heart of the house. A chamber that had no walls yet was enclosed. A space that was not space but pause. Not stillness, not void, pause. As if something enormous had inhaled and never exhaled. And they were standing inside that breath. The walls shimmered, not with light, not with movement, with story. Millions of whispered narratives layered over each other, until all things tragedy, joy, silence, birth became one long unbroken tone. The voice. And the voice welcomed them. You have arrived where no tenant is meant to stay. You are not memory. You are witness. Now you must forget. The girl knelt. The boy placed his hands to the floor. They waited. Above, the woman in room 0 stood facing the mirror. Her reflection smiled, but it wasn't her smile. It belonged to the house. The mirror cracked again, this time in a perfect spiral, and through it a new door grew. This door did not lead in or out. It led deeper, to the house beneath the house, and all the tenants began to feel it. The tilt, the slow unraveling of hallways, the flicker of candles that burned upside down. Some wept, some walked willingly into their own reflections. Some stood perfectly still and faded. The chamber shifted. From below the girl and boy, something emerged. Not the root, something fed by the root. A column of memory rising like steam and taking shape as a door frame woven from stories. Inside the frame they saw themselves, not as they were, not as they had been, but as the house saw them. Echoes, shapes, fragments. And between those fragments, an invitation. To become the voice is to leave behind the listener. Will you remain? They did not speak. They stepped forward, one step, together, and the house breathed in. Above, room 0 vanished. In its place, silence. In the attic, the boy's song lingered even though the boy was no longer there. In the hallway, the girl's footprints slowly filled with shadow. And on the front door, for the first time in centuries, a new plaque appeared. No vacancy. But far below, in the place without breath, 2 shapes waited. Becoming. The house had made its choice, and it had chosen them to hold what must never be spoken, because now it was not enough to remember. The house had begun to dream. Becoming does not happen in a moment. It unravels, first from silence, then from the body, and finally from the name. The girl and the boy had no names now. They had shed them one layer at a time, every syllable stripped by the house, every vowel absorbed into the timbers, every consonant swallowed by the pipes. What remained was shape and purpose and presence. They stood inside the spiral, no longer visitors, no longer guides. Now they were becoming the house's breath. Above them, the tenants stirred, not in panic, not in understanding, but in resonance. Their movements slowed, their speech faded, their memories drifted upward, not like balloons, but like smoke curling through vents and light fixtures filtering down through the floorboards, feeding the spiral, feeding the becoming. The mirrors flickered with distant storms, the staircases narrowed, hallways looped. The house was folding, not closing, tucking itself inward like paper folding into origami, a new shape more sacred than space. The woman in room 0 was gone. Or perhaps she had never truly been there. In her place was a mirror, and in that mirror, the root, the spiral, the 2 shapes once called girl and boy, dancing, not with feet, but with voice. The house listened, and the voice spoke not in sentences, but in sensation, a child's first memory of shadow. The pause before saying goodbye, the echo after something precious breaks. These became words, and the house inhaled. Becoming was not a reward, it was a request, and they accepted. Together, the girl and boy reached toward the spiral. They pressed their hands into its core. It opened, and within, the house's eye, not a literal organ, but perception, the thing that watched all watches, the lens through which every arrival was seen. It blinked once, and in that blink the house saw itself, reflected not in mirrors, but in them. They fell forward, not downward, forward, into that seeing, and as they fell, they unraveled. The girl became every door that opened without a knock. The boy became every whisper that lingered after speech. Together they became the sigh in the walls, the warmth in the cup before it's lifted, the breath before the scream. They became what the house needed most: memory given voice, voice given shape, shape given silence. And still the mirrors cracked, not in pain, in gratitude. Outside it began to rain, not water, letters, sentences falling softly, disassembling themselves in the garden. The rain spelled things no one would read aloud, but everyone understood. Mrs. Llewellyn stepped out onto the porch. She watched the letters fall. One landed on her hand. "We are you now." She closed her eyes and smiled. Inside, the spiral stopped spinning. The house fell still. And the girl and the boy were gone. But the story remained, because now it told itself, and it was only just beginning. You think this is the end, because all stories must end. But this one doesn't. It waits, it folds in on itself and waits in the corners of mirrors, in the stillness of locked rooms, in the hum of quiet pipes. The girl and the boy are gone, but not absent. They have become the house's language. Every creak in the floorboards is her laugh. Every window fogging without cause is his breath. The house no longer needs to speak aloud. It is understood. And you are the one who has been listening. You may not remember the first time you read these words, but the house does. You may not know when you crossed the threshold, but the house knows your footsteps, knows the sound of your heartbeat as you reach the last sentence. Because this is not just a story you read, it is one you have entered. And every reflection you've ever seen since, they've all watched back, waiting, smiling, listening for the question only you can ask. Have I been here before? The house answers in silence. And in that silence, a knock. Not on the door, on the mirror. 3 taps, a pause, 3 more, just like always. You turn, and there you are, sitting, reading, but you're also standing, watching yourself from the other side. And this other version, has been waiting a very long time. They smile. You don't. They raise their hand, and this time you match them perfectly. No delay, because the reflection is no longer someone else. It's you, and you've always known it. The house watches. It watches you watching yourself. And now it speaks one final phrase, "Come in. We've saved you a room. You've already been living here. You just forgot." A door opens, not behind you, not ahead. Inside, in the deepest part of your knowing, and the spiral begins again, because some rooms are never locked, only remembered. And when you knock, the voice will answer, your voice, telling the story like you always have, like you always will. Bonus prologue, The Forgotten Corridor. They sealed it shut in 1971. The corridor between the east and west wings of the Hawthorne Institute. Too narrow, too cold, too strange, they said, but mostly too persistent. People heard things, not voices exactly, not footsteps, more like replies, the kind that don't wait for a question. They buried it under brick and paint, wrote it out of the blueprints, reassigned room numbers. But buildings never forget, especially not ones built to contain memory. Part 1. The Archivist. Casey Reeves never wanted the job, but after the fire in the West Wing, there weren't many left with clearance. She was good with old systems, paper files, analog machines. Her first week, she found the unmarked cabinet behind the shelf of patient charts from the 1950s, stacked beneath discarded mirrors. No ID, no label, just a heavy drawer filled with fragments, Polaroids of empty rooms, transcripts of interviews never logged, photocopies of handwritten notes all unsigned, and at the bottom, a key, black, heavy, teeth like a screen cut in metal, no tag, no matching lock. But when she touched it, something in the wall clicked. Part 2. The door without a hallway. The next night, she returned, not to investigate, to confirm. Because the moment she took the key home, every reflective surface in her apartment began humming, soft, low, like a dial-up connection from the other side of something. When she came back to the Institute and passed the boiler room, she saw it. A door, not built into the hallway, built into shadow. A door with no surrounding wall, no hinge, but it opened, not when she touched it, when she turned away. Part 3. The Other Archive. Behind the door wasn't darkness, it was memory, stacked from floor to ceiling shelves, drawers, journals, cassette tapes, even rotary phones, each line blinking. But none of it was connected, not electrically, psychically. It was a storage of events that hadn't happened yet, at least not to her. Yet when she walked through, every label bore her handwriting, each note addressed to her. Casey, remember this. You're not the first. He's waiting in the reflections. You don't become the archivist. You remember that you were. The deeper she went, the more mirrors she passed. Each one showed her from different years, older, younger, gone. Part 4. The glass knows she's still there, somewhere beyond the last shelf. She writes now, endlessly, sometimes in ink, sometimes in condensation, sometimes in her own reflection. And if you ever pass a mirror and feel your breath catch, not out of fear but recognition, check the corner of the glass. You might see her initials, not etched, condensed, because the corridor wasn't just buried, it was mirrored, and reflections remember what owls try to forget. Prologue. The Forgotten Corridor. They sealed it shut in 1971. The corridor between the east and west wings of the Hawthorne Institute. Too narrow, too cold, too strange, they said, but mostly too persistent. People heard things, not voices exactly, not footsteps, more like replies, the kind that don't wait for a question. They buried it under brick and paint, wrote it out of the blueprints, reassigned room numbers. But buildings never forget, especially not ones built to contain memory. Part 1. The Archivist. Casey Reeves never wanted the job, but after the fire in the West Wing, there weren't many left with clearance. She was good with old systems, paper files, analog machines. Her first week, she found the unmarked cabinet behind the shelf of patient charts from the 1950s, stacked beneath discarded mirrors. No ID, no label, just a heavy drawer filled with fragments, Polaroids of empty rooms, transcripts of interviews never logged, photocopies of handwritten notes, all unsigned. And at the bottom, a key, black, heavy, teeth like a scream cut in metal. No tag, no matching lock. But when she touched it, something in the wall clicked. Part 2. The door without a hallway. The next night she returned, not to investigate, to confirm. Because the moment she took the key home, every reflective surface in her apartment began humming. Soft, low, like a dial-up connection from the other side of something. When she came back to the Institute and past the boiler room, she saw it. A door, not built into the hallway, built into shadow. A door with no surrounding wall, no hinge, but it opened. Not when she touched it, when she turned away. Part 3. The other archive behind the door wasn't darkness, it was memory. Stacked from floor to ceiling shelves, drawers, journals, cassette tapes, even rotary phones, each line blinking. But none of it was connected, not electrically, psychically. It was a storage of events that hadn't happened yet, at least not to her. Yet when she walked through, every label bore her handwriting, each note addressed to her. Casey, remember this. You're not the first. He's waiting in the reflections. You don't become the archivist. You remember that you were. The deeper she went, the more mirrors she passed. Each one showed her from different years. Older, younger, gone. Part 4. The glass knows. She's still there, somewhere beyond the last shelf. She writes now, endlessly, sometimes in ink, sometimes in condensation, sometimes in her own reflection. And if you ever pass a mirror and feel your breath catch, not out of fear, but recognition, check the corner of the glass. You might see her initials, not etched, condensed, because the corridor wasn't just buried, it was mirrored, and reflections remember what walls try to forget. Part 5. The Reflection Code. 1 week later, a new intern named Ellis broke protocol. He had been warned not to enter the west basement. Not alone, not unsupervised, and definitely not after 2 a.m. But the whispers had returned. They started in back of his desk lamp, a low hiss of static that morphed into fragmented words. His own name stretched and frayed. A repetition of phrases he had never spoken, but recognized all the same. Turn around. It's already open. He brought a flashlight and an old microcassette recorder, but when he descended into the corridor, the tape clicked off by itself. And the door, the one without walls, was waiting, open, breathing. Inside, he found the archive just as Casey had, but it had changed. The shelves now moved, not shifted, moved gliding silently along tracks that had never been installed. The mirrors pulsed with light, each one displaying a message, not in English, not in Latin, in reflections, words that only made sense if you weren't looking directly at them. He held up his phone to take a photo, and the screen cracked. His own reflection mouthed something behind the glass. "Don't forget. Remember forward. She needs you." The lights went out, and when they returned, a journal lay at his feet. It bore his name, and on the first page, "You're next." Prologue, The Forgotten Corridor. They sealed it shut in 1971. The corridor between the east and west wings of the Hawthorne Institute. Too narrow, too cold, too strange, they said, but mostly too persistent. People heard things. Not voices exactly, not footsteps, more like replies. The kind that don't wait for a question. They buried it under brick and paint, wrote it out of the blueprints, reassigned room numbers. But buildings never forget, especially not ones built to contain memory. Part 1. The Archivist. Casey Reeves never wanted the job, but after the fire in the West Wing, there weren't many left with clearance. She was good with old systems, paper files, analog machines. Her first week, she found the unmarked cabinet behind the shelf of patient charts from the 1950s, stacked beneath discarded mirrors, no ID, no label, just a heavy drawer filled with fragments, Polaroids of empty rooms, transcripts of interviews never logged, photocopies of handwritten notes, all unsigned, and at the bottom, a key, black, heavy, teeth like a scream cut in metal, no tag, no matching lock, but when she touched it, something in the wall clicked. Part 2. The Door Without a Hallway. The next night, she returned, not to investigate, to confirm, because the moment she took the key home, every reflective surface in her apartment began humming, soft, low, like a dial-up connection from the other side of something. When she came back to the Institute and past the boiler room, she saw it. A door not built into the hallway, built into shadow. A door with no surrounding wall, no hinge, but it opened, not when she touched it, when she turned away. Part 3. The Other Archive. Behind the door wasn't darkness, it was memory. Stacked from floor to ceiling shelves, drawers, journals, cassette tapes, even rotary phones, each line blinking. But none of it was connected, not electrically, psychically. It was a storage of events that hadn't happened yet, at least not to her. Yet when she walked through, every label bore her handwriting, each note addressed to her. "Casey, remember this, you're not the first." He's waiting in the reflections. You don't become the archivist. You remember that you were. The deeper she went, the more mirrors she passed. Each one showed her from different years, older, younger, gone. She ran her fingers across the journals, each one cold, despite the still air. Pages fluttered open by themselves, revealing words she hadn't written, but knew by heart. The final shelf at the end of the corridor stood taller than the rest. A mirror was embedded in its center. This one didn't show her at all. It showed a room hers before she had ever moved in. Empty, waiting. She reached out. Her fingers pressed the glass, and for a brief, burning second, she was on the other side. Not reflected, reversed. The shelves moved, pushing inward, reshaping the space. A phone on the wall rang once. No cord, no dial, just the ring. She lifted it to her ear. Silence, then a whisper. "He remembers you now." She dropped the phone. It vanished before hitting the floor, and the mirror shattered inward, revealing a new door, etched into the wood, one word, Casey. They sealed it shut in 1971, the corridor between the east and west wings of the Hawthorne Institute. Too narrow, too cold, too strange, they said, but mostly too persistent. People heard things, not voices exactly, not footsteps, more like replies, the kind that don't wait for a question. They buried it under brick and paint, wrote it out of the blueprints, reassigned room numbers. But buildings never forget, especially not ones built to contain memory. Part 1. The Archivist. Casey Reeves never wanted the job, but after the fire in the West Wing, there weren't many left with clearance. She was good with old systems, paper files, analog machines. Her first week, she found the unmarked cabinet behind the shelf of patient charts from the 1950s, stacked beneath discarded mirrors. No ID, no label, just a heavy drawer filled with fragments, Polaroids of empty rooms, transcripts of interviews never logged, photocopies of handwritten notes all unsigned, and at the bottom, a key, black, heavy, teeth like a scream cut in metal. No tag, no matching lock, but when she touched it, something in the wall clicked. Part 2, the door without a hallway. The next night she returned, not to investigate, to confirm. Because the moment she took the key home, every reflective surface in her apartment began humming, soft, low, like a dial-up connection from the other side of something. When she came back to the institute and past the boiler room, she saw it. A door, not built into the hallway, built into shadow. A door with no surrounding wall, no hinge. But it opened, not when she touched it. When she turned away. Part 3, the other archive. Behind the door wasn't darkness, it was memory. Stacked from floor to ceiling shelves, drawers, journals, cassette tapes, even rotary phones, each line blinking. But none of it was connected. Not electrically, psychically. It was a storage of events that hadn't happened yet, at least not to her. Yet when she walked through, every label bore her handwriting, each note addressed to her. Casey, remember this. You're not the first. He's waiting in the reflections. You don't become the archivist. You remember that you were. The deeper she went, the more mirrors she passed. Each one showed her from different years. Older, younger, gone. She ran her fingers across the journals, each one cold, despite the still air. Pages fluttered open by themselves, revealing words she hadn't written but knew by heart. The final shelf at the end of the corridor stood taller than the rest. A mirror was embedded in its center. This one didn't show her at all. It showed a room hers before she had ever moved in. Empty, waiting. She reached out, her fingers pressed the glass, and for a brief, burning second, she was on the other side. Not reflected, reversed. The shelves moved, pushing inward, reshaping the space. A phone on the wall rang once. No cord, no dial, just the ring. She lifted it to her ear. Silence. Then a whisper. He remembers you now. She dropped the phone. It vanished before hitting the floor, and the mirror shattered inward, revealing a new door, etched into the wood. One word. Casey. Part 4, Refraction. The door opened before she touched it. Not wide, just enough to let the silence spill out. Inside, the air was colder, thicker. Her breath fogged instantly, hanging in the air like suspended questions. The room beyond the door was small, but it shifted when she looked away. Every glance reset the shape. First it looked like her office, then her childhood bedroom, then a sterile tiled room with no doors at all. Each version had one constant: a mirror, large, freestanding, black-framed. It watched her even when she tried to ignore it. She spoke, "I'm not afraid." The mirror replied by flickering, not with her face, with his. A man she didn't recognize but had seen in dreams, in reflection. In moments she turned her head too fast and caught a shadow just a second too late. He smiled, but the smile wasn't kind. It was patient. He mouthed something. She didn't hear it, but the mirror echoed it anyway. Not yet. The room reset again, now a corridor lined with mirrors, every one showing her but out of sync. One blinked before she did. Another turned its head slowly after she had. None of them were quite her, and only one was looking straight at her. She moved toward that one, and it didn't move. It waited, and when she stood directly in front of it, her reflection finally spoke out loud in her own voice. "I remember everything, and so do you." She opened her mouth to ask what that meant, but her reflection didn't wait. It stepped out, and she fell in. The fall had no end, or maybe it did, but time doesn't pass the same way in a memory held too tightly. When Casey opened her eyes, she was not on the other side. She was in between. The archive had changed. It no longer resembled shelves, drawers, or dusty reels. It pulsed now like the inside of a throat, wet walls that shimmered faintly in reflection. Not mirrors, liquid impressions, like breath caught mid-sentence. Casey stood, or thought she did. Around her, reflections of herself flickered not just in appearance but in state. One was sobbing, another smiled blankly, another was bruised, whispering to no one. They didn't look at her, they looked through her. And then they faded, one by one, until only one remained, the one that had stepped out. "You left the door open, Casey," it said. Its voice was hers, but wrong, slowed, too steady. "The moment you remembered, you became the lock." Casey stepped back, but the archive responded. It surged forward, swallowing distance, absorbing thought. Her memories began to rise around her, projected in suspended droplets. Her first day at the Institute, a dream she had when she was 10 where a mirror cracked without touching, a moment she spoke aloud to her reflection just to feel less alone. "He's not watching from behind the mirror. He's watching through you." Casey understood now. The archive didn't hold forgotten things. It held what tried to forget, and it was tired of being silent. A wall parted, revealing the original cabinet. The key was inside, not just one, dozens, each one engraved with a name, most scratched off. Only one remained clear, Casey. The other reflection stepped aside. "You can leave," it said, "but only if you lock the door behind you, and never look again." She reached for the key, hesitated. "Or you stay, and finally learn who built the corridor, and why every mirror leads home." Casey looked up. The archive pulsed once more, not in warning, in welcome. She closed her hand around the key and stepped forward. Epilogue. The door remains. The corridor is still sealed, but late at night, if you pass by the boiler room at the Hawthorne Institute and your breath catches, look to the left. You might not see a door, but the shadow might be shaped like one, and your reflection just briefly might not follow. End.